Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Laura Hanson with Connect My Brain. I'm so glad that you're joining us in this series on collaborative health. We are bringing together some of the coolest minds in healthcare, at least in my opinion, and about taking this different approach to looking at the brain and how the brain is such an instrumental part of your healthcare. So today I have Dr. Ben with us, and Dr. Ben has some very unique approaches to working with the brain and working with different cases. And so Dr. Ben, welcome, and thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me, Dr. Hanson.
Oh,
Pleasure
yes.
being here.
It's great. So why don't you just kind of give us some background to you? What made you go into being a chiropractor and then really going into this direct path of neurology and the brain?
Perfect. Yeah. First off, I always wanted to do more with people, help them out, especially working with concussions and head injuries, which I specialize in. Having first off had a concussion myself, a pretty severe traumatic brain injury. When I was 10 and a half, I was in a coma for 5 days.
Wow.
And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a pretty big story, but
share with us.
Perfect. So when I was in the hospital, of course, comatose for 5 days, they had people lined up for my organs because they didn't expect me to make it through the night. So I was secondary or following a skiing accident where I went over a mountain of snow and landed head first on my head. It was, of course, skiing. I've been skiing for quite some time, so it wasn't anything new for me. So I've been skiing since I was 3. My dad's actually a ski patroller, so he was there on the hill with me. Or not at the time, but he pulled me off the hill. My friend had gone down to get him and said, there's something wrong with Ben. He'd been injured. So my dad actually helped pull me off the hill because being a ski patroller. We were rushed to the hospital. Within that first couple nights, that, like they said before, they had people lined up for my organs, so they didn't expect me to make it through. I had brain pressures that were measured in 5 to 6 times what is normal.
Wow.
So they actually put an ICP screw in to see if they could monitor it, as well as if they needed to do any cranial surgery to relieve that pressure.
Wow.
Following that, 5 days later, I woke up, came out of it. My left side was paralyzed. I couldn't talk, had a mentality of maybe a 3-year-old, be able to follow a few simple commands, a few words. I didn't know how to tie my shoelace. I didn't know how to tie a tie. I didn't know where I lived, what I liked, didn't like, food. I kind of lost all my memory from before age 10. So I had to relearn all that over. And in the hospital, I had to relearn how to walk, how to talk, how to move, how to tie a shoelace. Believe it or not, I ended up actually walking out of hospital not far after that, so it was quite a miracle. And then I was actually back skiing before the season was done. So it was quite amazing. I still had a lot of struggle following that accident, though. I still have some weakness on my left side, but not noticeable except for by me. But in school, it was a struggle. I always had struggled in school. I struggled with reading, struggled with education. No one really could figure out what was going on or how that is. And it wasn't until going through 2 graduate programs and then going into Doctor in Chiropractic and then also doing postgraduate through studies in functional neurology that I realized that it was really a process of how my eyes were moving and how the connections in brain stem were not really making the connection as well as they should. Even like for loss of my left side, I really didn't really know where my left side was. So I had to figure that out through the mapping of my brain and where things are. And it came back rather quickly, but it just took some extra special help from people who understood on how the brain and body worked in order for that to come together. So after seeing all these specialists on trying to overcome this head injury, I really developed a need or a want to help other people who've had head injuries. And so that kind of started my educational journey on where I am now and where I kind of keep progressing and learning to try to help other people through functional neurology and chiropractic neurology.
What made you decide to go into chiropractic?
So going into chiropractic, again, my journey was I wanted to help people. I love the manual aspect of working with people. Prior to chiropractic, I worked as a performance enhancement specialist with NFL players, doing NFL combine training, Olympic athletes, and soccer players, and different sports. And I always wanted to do more and do a little bit more with my understanding and talents and try to help people out and improve performance. So I started looking at, well, what can I do that has a license to allow me to do more? And I really kind of fell in love with the chiropractic aspect and the manipulation and being able to apply neurology to someone. And that's really what the focus was from day one going into chiropractic, was doing chiropractic neurology on top of it. So I started learning the neurology from the first day with chiropractic school.
Wow, that is so interesting. I really had no idea that you had gone through that. And that is such a similar story to what I went through with my own child when she experienced a traumatic brain injury, and such a similar connection about what she had to go through. But boy, I tell you, I wouldn't have let her back on the slopes. I would have wrapped her up in bubble wrap. I feel like that every time she gets in her car. So that is amazing. I had no idea. And I think that's such a great segue into collaboration. I've been so fortunate to connect with this group, and so many different professionals have come together. I've been sharing this with you all every week about brain and body rehabilitation specialists, and now there's a group of us under one roof. And I feel so fortunate to be able to interview all of them because I've learned so much more about each of them individually. So let's kind of go into that piece. Dr. Ben, what made you decide to go into more of a collaborative approach?
Well, it makes a lot more sense when you have ability to utilize skills from different practitioners that are like-minded, that are able to provide solutions for people. And also when everybody has a like-minded goal and direction, people tend to get better faster as well. And kind of like going back to what I had experienced in the past, where the head injury, where you go to individual provider and no one really has a solution, no one's really talking with each other. So being able to communicate and work along with a collaboration of practitioners like Dr. Hansen, Dr. Noel, and so forth, that we can better utilize each person's talent, and it's better for the patient. So they tend to see better results.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think about so many different cases over time where people didn't really realize how many different people were involved in a case, but they were never communicating with each other. And I know we're working on a case together right now, and it's just so positive for the patient. After I see them, I can come right back to you and I can say, this is what we found today and the things that were going on. And it's like an update, an assessing update every single time that the patient comes in. I think with the mindset of putting the patient in the middle and all the different possibilities that could literally benefit that patient, we're very fortunate to have so many different things under one roof in order to, like you said, help the patient. So what's your goal now with where we are at? We call for short BBRS because it's a long name, Brain and Body Rehabilitation Specialist. So when we use BBRS, that's what we're referring to. So tell me what your goal is. What do you hope for BBRS to grow into? What are some things that you're working on personally that's going to enhance this collaborative approach for patient care?
Well, a big thing is to provide a center or a resource for people who are underserved or not being served. I've had the opportunity to travel different places because patients were underserved. So having a localized place that they can come to and know that they're going to get the best care that they can get is pretty positive. And then growing as a clinic and providing education for people is going to be good. Being able to teach not only our doctors within the clinic, but also other doctors as well. I think that's going to be a pretty impactful aspect for helping people out. And then for my own kind of growth, being able to just collaborate, like with Dr. Hansen. I learn every day from Dr. Hansen, so it's great to be able to work with you. And I always come with a new idea, like, well, what about this? Can we try that? So it's good. And then for me, just working and trying to understand brain. So I study a lot and take a lot of courses on concussion or brain work to try to always do better. So I always want to try to make sure the patients left better than they were before. And so it's constantly learning how to do that.
Well, and that's a good part too, we should touch on the educational part that we're going to have available at BBRS. So we have one program already scheduled in November, and this is for doctors to come and to learn. And I know some areas that I want to touch on in inviting the community to come in so that I can teach them from a developmental model what parents could be really doing in order to understand why their child is doing what they're doing. And, here's this concussion aspect. And I remember my daughter feeling the same way. Like you said, when you came out of your coma, you felt like you were 3 years old, right? And it's the brain going back to this rudimentary place of learning and then beginning to just push itself forward. And of course, it's rapid compared to an actual developmental continuum, but it's so interesting how the brain actually works like that. Now, where do you fit into this educational arena? What's your goal? What do you want to really focus on in education?
So a lot of, of course, brain. I love brain, everything brain. But within brain, being able to understand how the inner ear kind of works, the vestibular system, how the eyes work, and how they tie into that brainstem. And then providing education solutions to refocus brain on like thinking, be able to think better, cognitive aspects to work with people have like migraines or dizziness. They've had a head trauma. So kind of understanding the system and where it's maybe not quite utilizing all the players on the field and getting those players back on the field within the brainstem to make the functionality better. So kind of like bringing in the educational aspect of understanding the clinical side of some of those modalities or features or ways of working with that to make them better.
So let's focus on sports concussion. Because like I had a mom here this morning who was thinking about a young man who's actually had 8 concussions, and like you tied in from your injury and impact on academics, and I'm sure there's other areas like emotion and mood. In your clinical opinion, what are some real red flags, not only for the youth, but an adult, anybody that has had, I don't care if it's even one concussion, but now all of a sudden your brain is just not quite the same? what are some red flags that would help people realize that they may really need to get themselves checked out? Because so often, as long as a person's walking and talking, everybody goes they're okay. So what are some real concrete physiological things that our listeners may say, well, that's what I experience? What are some red flags?
Well, for definitely kids, if they're in school or they're not, and they aren't able to get back to school because they can't read, reading's trouble. They can't comprehend what they're reading. They say, I read the words, but it's not making any sense. Or words become blurry. That's going to be a challenge. Also, if they have nausea or they get dizziness or they get lightheaded when they stand up or move or they feel like they're going to faint, those are really kind of, it's time to get something checked out. And if it gets prolonged and they keep going on, it could lead to further trouble down the road. You want to make sure that, one, they are cleared for, of course, sports before they get back into it. But again, headaches. Kids usually don't get headaches all that often. So if they're starting to get headaches more, they're starting to get pain more, then that's some things to look at. Eye strain, eye fatigue. They're sleeping more or not sleeping at all. Those are all things that kind of take a look at and say, well, we need to get this checked out a little bit more. Usually you see with like teachers, it's academics.
Yes.
They're just not focusing well, which you may see a lot with your aspect of QEG and stuff, that focus is just a huge problem.
What about mood? Have you seen a lot with, like, I had read a few articles on this that several concussions can lead to depression even in our youth. Have you found that? Yeah,
there can be quite a bit of changes in personality or mood, or depending on how severe the head injury is. They can be acting different, more agitated or confused, which also can lead to agitation, anxiety, as you said, depression. Depression can be a little bit more. So you do see it, and if it's prolonged, you definitely want to get it checked out.
Well, this is really important because I do think this is an area that is overlooked, and it's considered, what's the word? I think they call it the silent injury, because there's no outward picture that there's been some kind of trauma. But inside, the whole brain is just, it's different. Now, have you noticed too that, and maybe you went through this yourself, when you had your head injury, the inflammatory cascade that encroaches the brain after a traumatic brain injury can be really detrimental, because it is a typical neurotransmitter, glutamate. However, it's an excitatory neurotransmitter. And if it's completely out of range, it can cause further inflammation, which can actually lead to the healing of those neurons to be impaired. Have you found this? Did you go through some very serious nutritional changes for the healing of your injury? Well,
I wish I kind of had a little bit more of that understanding back when I had my head injury personally. They really didn't have a lot of advice back then. So it's really important, though, to really control diet, limit the sugars, especially like you're saying, the glutamate, processed foods and stuff like that. You want to make sure that you're eating more wholesome. Big thing is reduce anything that's going to cause inflammation, such as sugars, a sugary diet, carbohydrates. You want to make sure that you're eating well. Get with a practitioner that can help organize a diet or improve on it.
I think it's so important. I know that We combined so many different wonderful practitioners into the care model for my daughter. And I think it's why it's so easy for me to step into collaboration, because I needed to be mom and she needed a team. So I think that's something that we can really appreciate from our past experience, that we really have a personal experience that can bring an understanding, as you said before, for that patient. So you've got some really unique pieces of equipment in your space. Why don't you highlight one or two of those for us, and what do they do and why do you use them?
So yeah, we have quite a few things. One of which is, they call it shockwave therapy, but more like a sound wave. So it's extracorporeal shockwave is what they kind of label it as in the research papers, but we just call it shockwave or sound wave therapy. And what it is electromagnetic impulse of basically a sound frequency. And the unique aspect of that is, one, it can help reduce pain, which is kind of cool. Helps reduce inflammation, brings healing to the area. Big thing, we've utilized it for brain. We're trying to use some studies with some good ones out of Europe with increasing blood flow to the brain. What they also found is that with this shock wave, that you see stem cell mediators to the areas that it targets as well. So we see that those mediators can help with healing as well. So increased blood flow, increased healing, reduce inflammation, and overall work with muscles, with ligaments, with bones. You can have bone growth. You can do quite a bit of it with it. The other thing we have is we call it EMTT, electromagnetic transduction therapy. So it's a big magnet that has a continuous impulsed aspect to it, and we can use that for both brain and for body to reduce, again, same thing, injury. We do photobiomodulation. We have a couple of different lasers that we utilize. One with BioFlex, and they're a facility out of Canada that utilizes them. Another one is the Avant laser, and a few other aspects with photobiomodulation. And that, again, looking at frequency of light with red and infrared aspects to modulate those through a frequency and through different waveforms to allow healing in brain. So we can customize those to brain or different parts of the body, or whatever ailment's kind of there to help with the healing.
Wow, that is just so exciting. Is there a set range, especially with your shockwave therapy? What is the range of frequencies that are available to you?
With that, we can do up to like 8 hertz.
Wow.
In different intensities. So we can different joules of energy. So
yes,
we can modulate that for whatever we want to look at doing. And then the same thing for the EMTT, goes up to 8 hertz, but it's also the EMTT, the transduction, magnetic transduction is a continuous stream with a pulse aspect to it.
Well, the frequency aspect always excites me because, back before there was drugs and surgery, everything was thought of in frequency. And now we are really back into that realm. And you see such an incredible acceleration in the healing process. And so I have a few pieces at my office, and we've been, my Sandy Springs part, and we've been even using it for like broken bones, and the changes are just rapid. So it's very exciting. So as we kind of wrap things up, it's really important for our audience to know, wow, this doctor has so many pieces to his background. What's the ideal patient to come to you, Dr. Ben, and to reach out to you? What kind of patient would best be served under your care?
Well, of course, anybody who's had a concussion, head injury, or traumatic brain injury, they've been to different practitioners. They've been to different places. They're not seeing results or not getting results. I usually see a few complicated patients, a little bit more complicated, but not always do they have to be complicated. They're just not finding answers. So If they have
Yeah.
something going on and they're not getting answers, there would be a perfect place to come see me and see if we can find a solution or where in the brain things are breaking down, and provide an option to make those brain cells or players on the sidelines get back in the game to play ball more efficiently and appropriately.
Well, I love that it doesn't have to be a complicated case. It's a case that whatever you're going through, if you're not getting your answers, if you're not getting better, if your situation is not resolving. And I think that is so important, because the longer things go on, the chronicity of it alone is going to add another layer of stress to our nervous system, to our brain, to our bodies. If somebody wanted to reach out and just kind of have a conversation with you or ask you a question, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
They can always reach out to Brain Body Rehabilitation Specialist, BBRS. And they can also go to our website. I think it's yourbbrs.com. You can also look at a subdivision of my company as well. It's Neuroworks Healthcare. Neuroworkshealthcare.com is a good way to take a look at stuff. And then email. So you can email or call the office.
All right, so let's give them your email and give them the number to the office.
So there's a few different emails. The office front desk info@yourbbrs.com. You can get a hold of me. Otherwise, Dr. Ben at neuroworkshealthcare.com. That's NEUROWRKS healthcare.com. If you want to send a Gmail account, you can send that as well. Dr. Ben Behrendt at gmail.com. There's always ways to get a hold of me.
You do have a lot of emails.
It's too many.
It is too many. I totally agree.
And then reach out to the office number. You'll find it here. It's 404-671-8499 for a brain and body rehabilitation specialist. And then,
that's so great to have all those ways of connecting. And I would really encourage anyone that is picking something up and from this podcast, or you're watching it as a video, and you really go, I really want to get better. I really don't want this to go on. And we've got situations now with things that are happening with degeneration in the brain of young people, long COVID, that's affecting people. Stress is affecting people. Anxiety is up. Any of those things, don't sit in it. There's no reason to. The approach at BBRS is a collaborative approach, meaning that there are so many different kinds of providers there, and we work together. We come together in clinical consideration and have conversations with each other, especially because we want to put you, the patient, in the center and get you from where you are right now to the next best place. There's even cases here in my Sandy Springs office. I'm going to collaborate with one of the professionals up there so that we can move this child forward. That is the most important thing. Don't sit and think that you cannot get better. Dr. Ben, would you agree with me and add anything to it that you like? Can we change these brains at any time?
They certainly can be changed. That's the great thing about neuroplasticity and the brain. And if you provide it the correct amount of stimulus or feedback in the correct manner at the right time, it starts remolding and remodeling to be more efficient. And like anything else, if you go to the gym, you kind of work out a little bit. If you go to the gym more often, you start rebuilding your body. So same thing with the brain. It can be remolded, rebuilt. Of course, there's limitations to everything, but for the most part, we can make changes.
And that's the most positive thing, is to always have that hope. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to add before we say goodbye for now to our listeners? But is there anything else that you would like our listeners to know?
Just a pleasure being here with you and on this conversation, and hopefully we're able to reach out to more people and help more people, because there's a lot of people that definitely could use some help and get the word out.
Yes, it's been a very, very crucial time in history, and the last couple of years have been hard for people. And I think that our timing coming together at BBRS is just absolutely divine intervention. Well, thank you so much for being with us. And this is Dr. Laura with Connect My Brain. You can always reach out at the office, 678-501-5172. You can also instant message me on Facebook, or if you would like to send a lead through the website, it is connectmybrain.com. And I always want to give a shout out to my podcast manager, Marcy Page. She always makes us all look good, and that's what it's all about, so that you will enjoy spending some time with us. So be blessed, take care, and thank you, Dr. Ben.
Thank you. Love your energy.
Thank you. Okay. Bye for now.